Most people believe food security begins in spring. They wait for warm days, longer light, and perfect soil. But real food security begins much earlier. It begins with what you choose to plant this month. Because the difference between a garden that feeds your family all year and a garden that runs out by late summer is not luck. It is timing. This month quietly determines whether your garden will still be producing when grocery prices rise, shelves thin, and weather becomes unpredictable. And today I want to show you exactly what to plant now so your garden continues feeding you long after most gardens are finished. Not with shortcuts, not with trends, but with a simple system that serious gardeners use to build long-term food security. The biggest mistake most gardeners make is planting for the next harvest instead of the next year. They choose crops because they grow fast, because they look productive early, because they promise quick results. And for a few weeks, everything looks successful. Beds are full, leaves are green, harvest baskets are heavy. But by late summer, those same beds begin to empty. By autumn, the pantry is thin. And by winter, they are once again depending on stores at the exact moment food becomes most expensive. Short-term planting always creates short-term harvests. Serious gardeners think differently. They are not asking what will grow first. They are asking what will still be feeding their family when the season is finished. This is how market growers remain consistent, how homesteaders avoid shortages, and how families quietly reduce their dependence on grocery stores without dramatic changes. The goal is not to grow more plants. The goal is to build a system where early crops prepare space for later crops, where fast crops protect slow crops, where every bed produces more than once, and everything begins with the foundation crops. Onions and leeks are among the most important plants you can start this month. They grow slowly, steadily, and store exceptionally well. A single planting can supply cooking staples for nearly an entire year. They do not rush. They do not demand constant attention. They simply build quietly in the background while the rest of the garden develops. Alongside them come lettuce and spinach. These are not planted for storage. They are planted to create flow. They give you early harvests while long-season crops are still establishing. They protect the soil from drying. They shade roots. They allow you to harvest while you wait. This early stage is not about abundance. It is about stability. Once that foundation is in place, the garden turns toward its working crops. Tomatoes, peppers, beans, cucumbers, and squash form the core of summer food production. But here is where timing becomes critical. Most gardeners plant everything at once, and when everything ripens at once, they are overwhelmed for a short time and empty for the rest of the season. Serious gardeners never plant in a single wave. They plant now, then again, 2 weeks later, and again after that. The result is not a rush of harvest. It is a steady flow. Food arrives gradually, processing becomes manageable, and meals remain consistent. This rhythm is what transforms a garden from a hobby into a food system. And then comes the layer that most gardens are missing: storage crops. These are the plants that quietly secure winter. Potatoes build calories. Garlic builds flavor, medicine, and preservation. Carrots and beets fill cellars. Cabbage becomes fresh food when nothing else remains. Winter squash becomes meals months after harvest. These crops are not exciting. They are not fast. They do not impress visitors. But they determine whether your family eats from your land or returns to the store when the season ends. Food security does not come from harvesting. It comes from keeping. The most important harvest is the one that is still feeding you when nothing else is growing. And finally come the crops that change everything, the ones planted once and harvested for decades. Asparagus returns every spring without permission. Rhubarb produces when almost nothing else does. Jerusalem artichokes survive cold, neglect, and poor soil while producing enormous yields year after year. These plants are not vegetables. They are infrastructure. They turn land into a long-term food asset. They quietly replace grocery bills, and they continue working even when you are busy with other things. This is where true independence begins. Because food security is not built in harvest season. It is built in planning season. It is built when you choose slow crops instead of fast ones. when you choose storage instead of novelty, when you choose systems instead of single harvests. What you plant this month will determine what you eat in summer, what you store in fall, and what you depend on in winter. And the gardeners who succeed are not the ones who plant more. They are the ones who plant with purpose. Because every seed you place in the soil today is a decision about your future. And in a world where food becomes more expensive, more fragile, and more uncertain, a quiet, well-planned garden remains one of the strongest forms of independence a family can build. Plant carefully. Plant with timing. And plant not only for today, but for the year ahead.